There are going to be a lot of fun teams to watch in the NHL this season, but with all the changes made this offseason, there are a few teams in particular that I am way more excited to watch this year than I was last year. We're going to talk about those teams and why right now. Hey everybody, it is September. We are getting closer and closer to hockey season, and that means that hockey will be on our televisions sooner rather than later. It is great to think about, and there are a lot of teams this year that I am really excited to watch, but there are a few of them that really stand out to me as teams that I am super excited about this season that I really wasn't that into watching last year, and that's mostly because of changes that they've made in the offseason, young players they have coming into the organization or onto the roster, and just a lot of positive things going on with those teams that really make me excited to watch a lot more of their games this season than I did last year. So I want to talk about those teams. Let's get into it, starting with number 5, and that is the Seattle Kraken. Now, I was definitely interested in Seattle last season just because they were a brand new expansion team, first year of playing in the league. And obviously, anytime you have a brand new team like that, it certainly draws a lot of interest. But the issue was with Seattle that they weren't very good. I mean, this team finished dead last in the Pacific last year and only won 27 games. And once kind of the newness of them being in the league wore off at the first half of the season, there wasn't a whole lot happening interesting in the second half of the season while they were miles and miles out of a playoff spot. But this year, however, I think there's a lot of positives about Seattle and what they've done this offseason that makes them a very interesting team again heading into this season, and one that I definitely want to keep an eye on. And some of the biggest things are their offseason additions, particularly Andre Burakovsky, who they signed in free agency, and Oliver Bjorkstrand, who they brought in from the Columbus Blue Jackets. Those are two players that should have a significant impact on the offensive side for this team. A team that really struggled to score goals last season should definitely score a lot more this year, those two players being big reasons why. They also added Justin Schultz on the back end, who isn't a huge addition, but does bring in another veteran D-man there with some offensive upside. So this is a team that I think is going to score a lot more next year and is going to help make them a better team. They also have two amazing young centers in this organization now. Matty Beniers, we know, is going to be a full-time NHLer this season. He played 10 games at the end of last year, was almost a point-per-game player in those 10 games. I absolutely cannot wait to see him over the course of a full season, probably going to step right in to the number 1 center role for the Kraken. And I honestly think he has a very good shot of winning the Calder Trophy as Rookie of the Year this year. They also have Shane Wright, who fell to them in this past draft all the way down to number 4 when he was expected to be taken number 1. Guess we're not 100% sure that Shane Wright is going to be an NHLer this year or if he's going to have one more year down in junior. But if Shane Wright plays in Seattle this year, and I think there's a good chance he is a Kraken all year long, then we're going to get a glimpse at one of the best young center duos in the NHL with Beniers and Wright. And just the potential there is astronomical for how good those two can be in the future. And they could be great players, both of them right now, still as teenagers and as really young stars in the making for the Seattle Kraken. So I am ecstatic to see Matty Beniers and hopefully Shane Wright as well in a Kraken uniform this year. And then the final thing that's really drawing my attention to the Seattle is how much better are they going to be? This is a team that no doubt should be better from what they were last year. With what they've added this offseason, with the addition of some serious offense and goal scoring coming into that lineup, with Bjorkstrand and Burakovsky and Beniers and probably Wright as well. Like, this team should be significantly better than they were last season, but how much better are they going to be? Are they going to be 5 wins better, 10 wins better? Are they going to be in competition for a potential playoff spot or in the wild card hunt? Or are they still going to be pretty well out of the playoffs? Like, does this team get a little bit better, or is this team like almost making the playoffs better? How much better are the Kraken going to be? I am super interested to find that out this year. So they're number 5 for me. Number 4, this one is easy. The Columbus Blue Jackets. I mean, this is a team that, quite honestly, I did not pay a lot of attention to last season. They were like kind of close to the playoffs, but never really within striking distance. They were a very average 500 team, and I didn't find them particularly fun to watch last season, but there is a lot of things going in the right direction for the Columbus Blue Jackets, and I certainly am going to be paying more attention to them this year. First and foremost, they went out in free agency and they grabbed the biggest fish on the market. Johnny Gaudreau shocks everybody and decides to go to Columbus, and he instantly makes this team way more interesting than they were last year. I mean, he was a very real MVP candidate last season, and now he's in Columbus. Brand new team, signs a big contract this offseason. How much better is Johnny Gaudreau going to make the Blue Jackets? And I just cannot wait to see him and Patrik Laine playing together in that lineup, with Laine being a pure goal scorer and Johnny Gaudreau being a good scorer but an exceptional playmaker. Going to be setting up Patrik Laine, I think, for a lot of goals this season. Though that's going to be a dynamic duo. I can see it already. And just his addition to this lineup makes this team so much more interesting and so much more fun to watch. So super excited about that. Columbus also added some toughness this offseason, and that is going to make them a lot more fun to watch as well. I love the rough stuff. I love physical hockey. Columbus was at the bottom of the NHL with only 7 fights last season. They weren't a very physical team. They weren't playing super chippy, intense games like that. Well, they went out this offseason and they added Erik Goodbranson to the defense, and they added Matthew Olivier to the forward group. And both of those guys are very willing fighters, very tough players, always stand up for their teammates. And all of a sudden now Columbus has some toughness on the roster and some guys there that can drop the gloves and are going to make them more rough, more physical, more fun to watch in that regard. And that definitely has me excited to watch some games as well. Let's see if Columbus can really build some rivalries with some of their opponents, particularly divisional opponents, throughout this season. And those guys are definitely going to make this team more fun to watch from a physicality standpoint. And finally, the last thing is just all the young talent that this Blue Jackets team has. I mean, I feel like because it's Columbus, they're not a team that gets a lot of fanfare, doesn't get talked about a lot in the media, doesn't get a lot of attention. I feel like their young talent is really, really underrated. But Columbus has put together a really good group. We saw guys like Cole Sillinger play really well last year. Igor Chinnikov has played well in his young career. Now they've got Kent Johnson coming in for his rookie season. And they also have a lot of other guys who aren't, brand new to the roster, but guys like Patrik Laine, who's still only 24. Zach Werenski's still only 25. Jack Roslovic is only 25. You've got Jake Bean and Andrew Peak, who are 24 on the back end. You've got Adam Boquist, who's only 22 on the back end. This team has some really good young talent, and I feel like that's been kind of overlooked, and I'm very interested to see how these young players play for the Blue Jackets this year, and how much better this team can be and what strides this team can take this season. Number 3 on the list, we have the Anaheim Ducks. Now, this was definitely a team that I enjoyed watching last year, particularly in the first half, where they had a really, really good first half of the season. Definitely faded down the back stretch, but there's so much to like about this Ducks team and where they're headed towards the future. They went 31, 37, and 14 last year, finished 7th in the Pacific. Again, really, really faded in the second half of the season after a very strong first half. But where do I even start with this team? How about Trevor Zegras? I mean, Trevor Zegras just himself is so skilled, so flashy, so much fun to watch. that he is a guy that's worth watching on television and certainly in person any chance that you can get. And he's going to draw attention and bring viewers to this team just himself, because he is a budding superstar in this league. And just the flash and skill that he plays with just draws everyone's attention to him. So Trevor Zegras, cannot wait to watch him now coming into his second full season in the NHL after a spectacular rookie year last year. Tons to like there. I also really like the veteran additions that the Ducks made this offseason. I'm really interested to see if those veteran additions can make this team better. John Klingberg on the back end, Ryan Strome up front, Frank Vetrano up front. Like, this team's made some real additions to this roster, and it's going to be interesting to see how the young talent and now these veteran guys mesh together and how much better that combined force can make Anaheim compared to where they were at last season, where they only won 31 games. Are they going to push over 40 wins this year? Is it not going to be that much of an improvement? Really going to be interesting to see. How does Klingberg look? How does Strome and Vetrano do? They played really well together when they were in New York, the short time that they were together. Can't wait to see if that carries over now into this Ducks lineup. So definitely excited about that. And then also, last but certainly not least, Mason McTavish. I mean, we just saw him dominate World Juniors. This kid looks more than NHL ready. And what kind of impact, how big of an impact is he going to have on this roster? He looks like a young goal-scoring star in the making. And it's going to be his rookie season, his first full year in the NHL after playing a few games last year. Cannot wait to see him in a Ducks uniform this year. Number 2 on the list, we have the Ottawa Senators. And number 2 and number 1 for me on this list are very similar. But you could really interchange them as far as which one's 1 and which one's 2. They're in very similar situations, and I am so excited for these two teams. Let's talk about Ottawa first. 33-42-7 last year, 7th in the Atlantic Division. But boy, oh boy, the offseason additions for the Ottawa Senators. Claude Giroux in free agency, trading for Alex DeBrincat, Cam Talbot now in goal. Talk about a team that is, certainly coming out of the rebuild and really trying to make that next step and make that jump towards playoff contention. You don't make moves like Ottawa made this offseason if you're not trying to get into playoff contention. The offseason was fantastic for the Senators. They're a significantly better team now than they were last year, and I cannot wait to see how they look on the ice with all of these new faces that will come in and have a significant impact for Ottawa. And then don't forget about Jake Sanderson as well. He is coming in and I think will immediately be a top 4 defenseman for this Ottawa team. Played college last year, has played really well with the U.S. national team. Now it is time to see him in the NHL. And I think Jake Sanderson is going to have a massive impact on the blue line for the Sens this season. It's an area where they needed to add, and they haven't added, at least so far, through trade or anything like that. They're going to be adding from within, with Sanderson likely making the jump to a top 4 NHL defenseman right away. And he is going to be one of my favorite rookies to watch this season and see how good he can be. We saw Moritz Seider come in with Detroit last year and play absolutely phenomenally. I think Sanderson may not have as big of an offensive upside in season as Seider did last year, but I think he can have a very big impact, a Seider-like impact on the blue line for the Ottawa Senators. And then lastly, playoff push. Can this team make the playoffs? I mean, with all the additions, with all that they've added this offseason, that's become a legitimate question. And people are talking about Ottawa potentially being a playoff team. Now, this is a team that has not made the playoffs in a number of years, has been rebuilding, and really hasn't been close to a playoff spot in quite a while. Are they ready to make that jump? That is a big question about this team this year, and it's going to be super fun to find out over the course of the season to see how much better this team is going to be. So that leaves number 1. And again, these teams could have been interchanged because they're in very, very similar spots. And it is the Detroit Red Wings. So many similarities between Detroit and Ottawa right now. Same division, coming out of a rebuild, looking like they're ready to make a significant jump. Detroit last year, 32-40-10 on the season, 6th in the Atlantic, not near the playoffs. But it's almost the same thing. Off-season additions, just like Ottawa. Detroit made some monster off-season additions. They added David Perron and Andrew Kopp up front. They added Ben Sherratt to the back end. They added Ville Husso now in goal to go along in a tandem with Alex Nedeljkovic. They also added Dominik Kubalik and Olli Maatta in what are more minor moves, but still will have a pretty big impact on the depth of this team. Tons and tons of changes for the Detroit Red Wings this offseason. A ton of additions. The Yzer plan is in full swing, and this team showed this offseason that they are shedding the rebuilder label, and they are going all in on trying to contend for a playoff spot and possibly make the playoffs this year. Very similar spot to the Ottawa Senators. Huge additions, huge moves this offseason. Are those moves going to work? Are they going to take that next step? Also want to talk about Moritz Seider. I mentioned him when talking about Jake Sanderson just a couple minutes ago. But Moritz Seider is already a bona fide number 1 star defenseman in the NHL. Oh yeah, he was a rookie last year. He won Rookie of the Year, and very rightfully so. And this kid, I absolutely love watching this kid play. He is the ultimate two-way defenseman, great all over the ice, offensive upside, still very strong and responsible defensively, very physical, which makes him even more fun to watch, not afraid to throw his body around. Just awesome player to watch. Young defenseman who is already becoming a superstar and will win at least one, if not multiple Norris trophies at some point in his career. I am willing to say that right now. Already their top D-man, and I cannot wait to see more of him this season. And then finally, just like Ottawa, playoff push. Is this team ready to make that jump? They certainly went for it with all the moves that they made this offseason. I'm very excited to see if they can get there. And we're going to find out over the course of this year. And I'm going to be watching way more Red Wings games this year than I did last season. Very interested and invested in this team. And cannot wait to see how this season goes for them. And I don't think them and Ottawa can both get into a playoff spot. But I think one of them can. So it is going to be a big-time fight between those two to see which team is more improved and which team is making a bigger jump from where they were at last season. So there you have it, everybody. Those are 5 NHL teams that I am super excited to watch this season. Way more excited to watch than I was last year. And definitely going to be paying a lot closer attention to these teams, watching a lot more of their games, probably streaming a lot more of their games. And just cannot wait to get the puck dropped and see what they're able to do. So let me know what teams you guys are interested in watching down in the comments below. Can't wait to hear what you guys think. Thank you so much for watching the video. Before you go, please don't forget to like, comment, share, subscribe, follow on social media. All those links are down in the description. If you'd like to further support the channel, the links to our merchandise store, membership, and donations are down in the description as well. Please keep spreading the word about this channel. Let's keep this thing growing. Thank you guys so much for watching. Hope you enjoyed, and I'll talk to you all soon.